a roofer or a plumber or electrician going to work, what could they be looking at in terms of efficiencies within their trade or within their day-to-day life?
Yeah. A lot of it is just, it's organisation, and it's thinking about how that things are going to progress. And so if we look at our situation, we can't make a frame out of our machine if someone hasn't drawn the model. And what typically will happen is, someone shows up with a PDF drawing or a really badly designed model, and it gets redrawn by about 5 people along the way, and nobody wants to own that model, and nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. So,
hey everybody, Gavin, Kyle, I'm the Gaffer. We're back again, and the guests keep on coming, this time all the way from New Zealand. And today's discussion, we're going to get into talking about efficiency within the workplace, within the construction space, and how can we make ourselves more efficient in terms of using the products and the materials that we have. And this guy has a company that does exactly that. So he's in the right space, he's in the right mind space, and he's in the right culture in terms of looking for efficiencies within the construction workplace. So I'm really excited to talk to Nick Coubray today, who's the CEO of Howick Ltd in New Zealand, because he's living it every day. He's dealing with materials that are, making a difference, I would suggest, because he's got a very innovative business that is looking at how to improve the constructability of the construction industry. And he's obviously got a really smart workforce behind him that's helping him drive that vision. And, he's a global player. So we need to sit up and listen to what he has to say, even if you don't like some of the stuff he might throw at you. But Nick, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, and I'm the Gaffer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, all the way from New Zealand, tell us about your backstory. Where did you get into the construction industry, and how did that evolve for us?
Yeah, so we've been a family business. So my father and grandfather actually started the business back in 1978. So as a general engineering firm, and then sort of from the mid-90s, they got into construction, machinery and the framing machinery we do. I was there, since I was like 3 or 4 years old in the factory, as you do with family businesses. And then sort of in the 2020-ish, came in full-time into the company. Then spent probably 7 years up in the UK, from about 2005. So I've sort of touched everything in the business, from sweeping the floors right through to building machines, assembling machines, working with customers, and visiting some amazing factories all over the place. So it's been quite a journey.
So just explain the actual product and the business. What exactly is the unique selling point for your company?
So our machines make roll form steel. So we take the coil of steel and we process it into a 4x2 stud or whatever size you want. But we do all the punching and cutting, and so we take a full model of the building and we output those pieces to an accuracy of plus or minus half a millimeter. So you're sort of talking automotive tolerances almost on some of these things. The machines themselves vary in size, from tiny little ones for little infill jobs and bathroom pods right up to big heavy gauge stuff for big structural elements. So they're not unique roll forming, but what is our sort of unique part of it is the way we do the software and the control systems and the accuracy, and probably a big part of it is the thinking behind the products. They've got to be simple to use. They've got to be efficient. And you've got to reduce your waste. The big thing with the waste is it's not just material waste, it's time waste, it's people's brain power, it's going back to site and measuring things. It's kind of a holistic picture of, it's the whole project, it's not just one piece. So our piece of a building, the framing side of it, is 10% of 10%. It's small, but it has a big impact further down the path.
Yeah. So you're driving the change, you're the CEO. Give me a bit of background about, that career progression for you, from the shop floor right up to CEO. How did you prepare yourself? Did you go back to college, or did you go working for somebody else, or did you just learn from the legacy crew, if you like?
Yeah, so we're really lucky. We've got a lot of long-termers in the company. So our current general manager has been with us for over 40 years. He was my dad's first apprentice if he ever took on. So very much, we were a small company back then, sort of 10, 15 people. So I'd go into work with Dad in the school holidays and be put to work doing sweeping the floor or putting some components together. Through that, obviously went to normal schools and things, and then went and did a mechanical engineering certificate at one of the polytechs here. Then from there into the workforce, I did a bit of everything. I came back onto the shop floor, did a bit of design work, spent some time in the accounts department doing all the purchasing and things, and then working a lot with the software guys and the design guys out on build sites. And that sort of progressed through to when I went to the UK. I actually went up there to help. We had a distributor there at the time, and it was not going very well. So I ended up taking over from what they were doing and then growing a UK presence. So we've probably got a couple of hundred machines in the UK and Ireland now. So there's a reasonable footprint there.
Okay, so let me get into that a little bit. So you can actually have distributors around the world for your products. So you do all the intelligence on your side of things from New Zealand and the back stuff and then ship it out? Or do you bring that intelligence into the different regions and say, right, here's the playbook for how to set this business up?
So we're really we make a tool. Think of it as a really flash hammer for the building context. It's a tool and it's how you use it. We have some countries, we have distributors that are locals. UK at the moment, we've got a couple of local guys working for us, but we've also got a couple of Kiwis that we've sent up that have gone through the apprenticeship route. A lot of our sales and support team have all come through that apprenticeship route. They come in and want to be a mechanical apprentice and then decide they want to do, say, CNC machining or electronics or software programming. So we've always been aware of making sure that if people want to go down those paths, you can. And that's how you retain really good staff. It's easy to go getting more and more expensive people that have got different skills, but if they don't understand the core technology, it's quite hard. And that sort of sets us apart. So, as I say, in UK and Ireland, we've got some Kiwis, and we've always had some Kiwis up there because we've got this great working holiday visa, which, again, reciprocated with Ireland. Lots of young people can come down here and work for a bit and then go home, or not is the case, in both directions. So it's really about that depth of knowledge. So when we go in to help a customer with whatever project they're working on, the person on the ground there can answer probably 95% of the questions straight away, where your typical sales force is not what we've got. You're not selling a really defined product. You're selling a system and a thought process and how do things work.
Yeah. So global footprint, give me an idea of how many regions you're actually in.
So we've got machines. Last count was about 85 countries. And you think of like all the major ones, but then we've got stuff in Mongolia and the desert in Mongolia. We've got stuff on funny little Pacific islands. We've got some machines and shipping containers that sit on the US Pacific Fleet, so they can do disaster relief. So it's a flexible piece of kit depending on what you want to use it for and which one you're selecting. So we get to go to some really interesting places, but we also have to think about when we're building machines and supporting them, there's a few places that you either don't want to go to or are not easy to go to. So like the one sitting in the middle of the Mongolian deserts, 1,000 kilometers from the nearest sealed road. So you're not going to just nip in there and fix something. So it's part of our philosophy of keeping things really simple. We always say it's easy to make things complicated, and it's really hard to make things easy. So we try to beat that into all our guys.
Very good. So how many guys have you got in the shop floor then in the New Zealand operations?
So in New Zealand, we've got about 53 current headcount, and then we've probably got 15 to 20 people overseas in different regions. Some of them distributors, some of them employees. So we're a pretty small team for the sort of thing we're developing, and we do cradle to grave development. So we do the machine design, the mechanical design, the electrical design, the software. We do most of the CNC machining in-house. There's a few bits we farm out to other local businesses. But most of our machine actually comes from New Zealand content, which again is quite unique because everybody likes to send stuff off to a cheaper place to build it, where we went down the path of, if we do it smart, we should be able to compete. We're not going to be the cheapest, but we know what we've got and we can control those things and we can keep that knowledge. And again, it's a decision we made to protect our IP is the more we can do in-house, the more we can kind of control what we do, the better it is for us, but also the better it is for the customer. So if you came along and saw us with a 30-year-old machine, I can go out to the workshop and get one of the guys to make the parts for it so we can keep it running. Electronics is a little bit more challenging, but mechanical stuff is easy.
Yeah. Well, I would have worried about this podcast if you told me you had a couple of hundred people working for you, because we're talking about efficiency. And
everyone wears a lot of hats.
everyone. So let's get into the core subject of today's talk, which is how do we make ourselves more efficient in terms of materials and products, and in terms of construction in general. Like, give us some of your brain set in that regard, and what you do in order to maximize efficiency. Now, I know obviously your model of your business is a beacon, but let's talk about, from a roofer or plumber or electrician going to work, what could they be looking at in terms of efficiencies within their trade or within their day-to-day life?
Yeah. A lot of it is just, it's organisation, and it's thinking about how that things are going to progress. And so if we look at our situation, we can't make a frame out of our machine if someone hasn't drawn the model. And what typically will happen is, someone shows up with a PDF drawing or a really badly designed model, and it gets redrawn by about 5 people along the way, and nobody wants to own that model, and nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. So we try to drive that thing as though, okay, work with your supply chain, get those architects or designers or detailers involved early on with the product they're going to be using, and then look for efficiencies. A really good example was we worked with a big house builder in New Zealand, and one of their biggest savings is that they know that their building will be within plus or minus a millimetre all round. They can pre-order their carpet pre-cut from the carpet mill, so it doesn't have any cutting on site, it just fits. Their stone benches, they pre-order them. And it took a lot of effort to get the suppliers to do it, because the traditional modelers, I come in and I measure it, and then I go off for 2 weeks, and then I come back and fit it, and hopefully I measured it right. They ended up saying to their suppliers that, hey, we will pay for it, whether it's right or wrong, as long as it's the dimensions we gave you, we'll pay for it. And if it's wrong, it's our issue, we'll put another bench in or another bit of carpet or whatever this component might be. That added sort of 10% to their bottom line straight away, just in time and efficiencies. So those are the things you've really got to look for. The things we start with a lot of builders early on is, we can make a panel for you, or a truss or a frame of some sort. What are you bolting to it? How are you bolting it to the ground? Where does the plumber want to put his holes? Where does the sparky want to put their holes? Quite often getting that engagement is where those huge savings come from. You've got a little bit of front-end cost for a massive back-end saving. And if you get everybody working together, you can put a house up in a matter of weeks instead of months. So that's a really key point to sort of understand. And it's a little sort of sideline story of that. We worked with one of the companies, and we got the plumbers to come and tell us where they want everything. Then the sparkies arrived on site and used all the holes, but they hadn't told us where they wanted their holes. So you can imagine the butting of heads on site that day. But we sort of learned from that again and said, okay, well, we know that we need to put holes at certain places. A couple of rows of holes by the floor, a couple in the ceilings, and round any doors and windows for switches and things. So we kind of default in as extras. And just so you just naturally start to do it. And you can go further on if you sort of get into some of the bigger guys. They'll plan their wiring loom for the house, and they'll say, this is what the house is going to be. You don't need to measure. You don't need to go and buy extras. This is exactly what you need. Here's your kit of parts. And that doesn't happen overnight. That takes 5 or so years to do it really well. But you can start with the small things.
Yeah. And we don't need to talk about, we're not talking about BIM here. Like, obviously BIM is a great revolution in terms of giving you that landscape of what you're trying to apply yourself to. Like, we're talking about general, common sense stuff here. Gather the team around, get a viewpoint from everybody where they see the challenge within the constructability of the product that has to be built, and who has the bigger challenge over who, and who has the more sort of leading role in terms of who gets in there first, that needs to get in there first. Because how many times have we seen plaster border guys, sorry, all the drywall guys, but, cutting wires, electrical wires, because they're in the way, or plasterers, cutting wires because they're in the way, and then having to go back and do all this kind of stuff, rewires and stuff like that. So
it's pretty common. And it's one of those things, as we look at it as an industry, and most of us are guilty of it, is it's always the next guy's problem. So whoever gets in first is first in, whoever second's got the first problem, and third's got second and first's problem, and some poor bugger at the end has got all the problems. Where the same sort of thing happens. The same guy who we work with here in New Zealand, first thing they do is they actually go and, using a bit of tech, they go and laser measure every concrete slab before they start. And if the slab is not right, we don't start the house, because if the slab is out of square or out of shape, everything from that point there is an extra headache and an extra heartache. It's weeks of extra time on the back end. So they, as their process is, right, it's not right, you fix it and we'll come back tomorrow when it's fixed, or next week, or whatever the time frame they're working to is. And that in itself, again, they're saving 5 and 10% here and there. They're building a really high quality building, and they've got rid of a lot of the headaches. And it takes the trades a few goes to get it right, to understand it. It's not a magic bullet. Every time they get a new trade on site, the second or third house is really good. The first one's always a bit of a fight, because everybody does it the way they want to do it.
Yeah, it's too. Would you say in general terms that the construction industry is too loose in regards to what we're talking about here? Is it, I suppose some people might be screaming at the screen and going, "That's easy for you to say. You're doing steel frame construction, It's not as cut and dry as you think it is."
Yeah, well, it applies everywhere, really. It's a material thing a little bit, but it's also a process. It's very much process, and just controlling that process and knowing where things fit. There's timber frame's got some benefits that steel doesn't, and steel's got some benefits that timber doesn't. And ask a brickie, and they've got a whole lot of reasons that they're better. But in reality, it's all one trade sort of working together to build buildings. And you can do some really cool stuff if you actually stand back and think about it, and that little bit of planning. And it's one of the things that I always see in the industry is it's kind of driven by costing. Everybody's in a race to the bottom, because no one wants to give a fixed price, because as soon as they do and they've got a problem to fix, it's blown out of the water. And that's one of the things that some of the technology we've developed, we're working towards, is we want to give you some flexibility so that you can go in and take a set of plans, and you've got a 5 or 10% adjustability factor for that first bit to get the first bit right. And then when you hand it on to your dry liner or your sparkies or your plumbers, they can come straight in and do it. They're not having to say, "Oh, hang on, come back, you need to pack this wall, you need to move this, it's in the wrong place." And it depends how far you want to take it. Obviously, the more money and time and bigger projects, you can do that easier. The small projects, you want to get in and out pretty quick, but you can still apply some of those learnings.
Yeah, you're predicting with confidence as well. That's what's screaming at me when you're talking there. It's, you're a precision guy, but start with the end in mind and work your way back to, as you say, the slab. And the slab is the most important part. Like, if the platform is not right, everything else is going to fall down with it. And then, you're just building the sequence into your modeling. So, just blows my mind that, we need to start thinking about this more. It doesn't matter if you've 3 people on the job. It doesn't matter. The same sort of theory should apply, shouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you bank the wins early, so you're not having to pay for them later. That's what you really need to be doing. The slab one's a good one, because we talk to so many people about that, and they say, "Oh, but it cost me extra to get it right." It's like, okay, but you're thinking about stage 1 payment. What about 10 stages down the back when you're finishing the building? And how much more does it cost you because you didn't spend an extra half a day on that slab?
Yeah. And we're like, my own background is health and safety. We're not even talking about safety here, but safety has a value out of this precision as well, which is obviously another reason we wanted to get you on the show, is because we see the whole value of, accuracy, planning, communication, coordination, collaboration, and also picking the right materials for the right job. Can we talk a bit about that, maybe, in terms of, we talk about the race to the bottom, people buying substandard materials that are cheaper than probably something that's going to last longer, but maybe cost more up front. And then maybe how you have a conversation with the client about, look, realistically, I'd do it in this way if I was you, because, maybe we don't have enough of those conversations as well.
Yeah, and there's so many ways we can take this down, lots of different routes. A lot of it is around a clean and tidy site. It's about not having stuff you don't need there. As we mentioned, waste, that's one of my big bugbears. Plasterboard is one that kills me, because in New Zealand we've got a monopoly. There's one supplier. And they'll quite happily sell you 30% more than you need, because they're selling you 30% more. There's no incentive to say, right, you actually QC it properly, get it right, and then you don't have all the stuff lying around on site. You don't have it broken in bins. And it's not just plasterboard. It's everything. So you look at your typical building site, there may be 4 or 5 skips. if you could get that down to 1/2 skip, there's a whole lot less movements, there's less trip hazards, there's less everything. And that's on your traditional site. Another really cool one that came out of one of our UK customers, they were talking about doing modular stuff. One of the big knock-on effects they really struggled to measure, because they were in central London, is when you build a modular box here, you're building it in a factory. It's not necessarily cheaper, but it is controlled. And they were bringing them in on trucks in the evenings, so overnight, and they were craning them off onto the site in the morning. The traffic incidences of accidents and sort of minor things going on around that site dropped 90% during that build compared to a traditional build, because there's no people there. There weren't people coming in and out of the site all the time. There wasn't 50 truck deliveries. There was half a dozen. And the effect, not only for the workers, but for the general public around that area is great too. So, and obviously that's a big scale thing. That's not your small builders doing that, but you can apply some of the same thoughts. You can off-site some elements that make sense. Like your frame and panel and stuff, and your truss panels coming in pre-assembled with it, no matter what they're made of, it's still the same idea, as you can bring them in and put them up with a small team. And that obviously helps the bottom line too, because if you've got 3 guys on site, you've not got 10 guys on site.
Hi guys, as you're enjoying this podcast, I just wanted to take a few seconds to let you know about my company, Coil Group. We're not just another safety recruitment agency. We're your partners in building a safer future. With over 25 years of experience and more than 1 million hours of safety work completed, our mission is clear: provide top-tier health and safety contractors tailored to the unique needs of your project. We also carry out on-site construction audits. From wind energy to power stations, utilities and engineering projects, our global reach and specialised expertise ensures your operations are not just compliant, but exemplary. For more information on how ensuring safety and sustainability of your products using our team of HSE contractors, visit coil-group.com or click on the show notes or video description now. I've also put a booking link into the description for you to click and have a one-to-one conversation with me. Now, back to the podcast. Enjoy and see you soon. Yeah. And as well as that, you're in a controlled environment off-site. You don't have the distractions of everyday dynamic construction going on around you, where you've got a box, you've got the guys in the box, and everybody has a station, and you're just running that like a production line.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be that sophisticated. Some of the factories we've put stuff into are literally a farm shed with a dirt floor, but they've got a process. And that's the real trick to it, is the process. It's not, we've worked with people like British Offsite, and they've got an amazing £40 million factory in London, which is great. It can pump out 7,000 houses a year. But there's not many people that have that sort of investment behind them. But then you look at, we've worked with Premier Modular in the UK quite a lot. And their system is a lot simpler. It's big sheds and it's a few fork trucks and lifts and things to move gear, but they're flexible. So you have this kind of flexibility versus like ultimately cost driven. And there's a happy place in the middle somewhere where most people fit.
Talk to me about pricing and hedging your purchasing power in terms of construction materials, and talk to me about, if I'm sitting in the transit van and I have a load of stuff in the back of the van from the previous job, legacy stuff, talk to me about the efficiency or the inefficiency model of what's going on with people not probably pricing, 24 months ahead of the game and stuff like that. I know, obviously, talk to me, give me examples of your business and how you hedge for steel, for example, or aluminium. Or
it's an interesting one, that, because the steel's a bit all over the place, and everyone's pretty much project based. So we will tend to buy stuff on a project by project basis and try and lock in the best price. But we don't tend to hedge stuff 6-12 months out, just because it's challenging because of the nature of the industry. But we don't want a whole lot of stuff lying around that doesn't get used. So that's kind of where our products come in. A good one is the mechanical strut. So for all your HVAC type stuff, which all the plumbers and sparkies will know pretty well. Here in New Zealand, it comes in a 6 metre length, which is actually a 5.8 metre length because it's a 20-foot container size. So they're paying for 6, they're getting 5.8, but that's fine. The accountants win that one. But they buy these lengths, and then the guys sit down and they drill holes in it and they cut it and they do all these things to it. So we've got a business called Roll Forming Services in New Zealand, which we set up to supply strut to the market to a whole lot of different customers. But we can run that machine like a framing machine. If you want a piece 200 millimeters long with one slot and two 13 mil holes in it, we can produce that for you. And if you want 10,000 of them, we can produce 10,000 of them all the same. And it just pretty much load the machine, hit start, and off it goes. So those are where those efficiency comes. Like you're not buying 6 meters and then throwing 30% away. You're buying exactly what you need. Even to the point we looked at doing things where we go and get pieces that are 1,200 long to fit in the van, or 1,800 long to fit in the van and fit in your roof racks. And as soon as someone pulls out a saw, either a hand saw or a grinder on site, you're in trouble. And they had a big fire here in New Zealand a while ago, and it was someone on site cutting something, set the building on fire. So then you got all your hot work permits and moving stuff off site. So that waste is actually understanding that it's not just a bit of material, it's the time. It's even if you're using the apprentice to go and do it, it still costs you probably €10 to cut that one piece every time he's got to go down and remeasure and carry it back up. And so those are the things you've got to look for, and they're really simple. But I think as an industry, most people are blind to them.
Yeah, I'm just after having a flashback as a young entrant into the construction market, working for a drywall company back in the day, shall we say, and jumbo stud. I remember just cutting jumbo stud all day with a chop saw, and I'm just thinking about the inefficiency of actually putting up that wall. Now, having said that, when the dryliners got the piece, they were just knocking it up. But if you were able to get it, that you didn't have to cut it in the first place. Such a simple ideology. But like, why not have somebody pre-cut all of the aluminium channel that was for the drywall? I don't know.
It's a bit of a mental block too. It's the way we've always done it. We buy a pallet load of stud and we cut it and we sort it out and we make it work. And you can get it cut to a certain length on the pallet, but there's always your headers and your doors and all your blocking studs and all that sort of stuff that still gets cut by hand. So that kind of leads to one of the things we develop, because we're super accurate on everything we do. The problem is you get to the building site and the slab is slightly thicker than it was supposed to be, the beam's not quite right, or something's moved. So you don't have that flexibility. So that's the really big downside of steel frame if you're trying to go and retrofit or into a brick and block building that's not quite what you thought it was. So your options are you go and laser scan everything. Fairly big expense in that. Someone's got to draw everything out. And then you come back 2 weeks later once they've processed it all and someone's moved something again. So that was our first path. We thought, let's do that. Then we actually got driven by a customer here who was doing a big Westfield shopping centre, and they came in and they wanted to make a telescopic stud. So they basically wanted to make a fat stud and a skinny stud that slide together so they could adjust the height of the studs. And we sort of stood back and looked at this and thought, well, that's okay, that's fine. There's people done that before. But how do we apply that methodology to make a panel that is adjustable up and down? So we ended up building a machine that made a normal C-stud, a U-track for your bases, and a rib stud which slides inside it. So, and that had deflection headers and everything you need for those sort of buildings. And the driving thought behind that is we want to make it easy for the guys because they want to go and grab a model because they're building a shopping centre, they've got a model, and they want to have 10% flexibility. We ended up actually doing some panels that were 2.4 metres that went up to 3.7 metres when they were expanded. So it gave them flexibility. They could go and if the building wasn't quite level, they could adjust the top tracks and they could play around with the shapes of the panels. So their install time, on one project we've done recently was a hotel, they got 67% to 70% of the labour reduction for the install crew because it was so fast going up. And we would assemble these kits and we'd put little wheels on them so they had caster wheels so they could come off the truck, go into the side elevator and up 10 stories and rolled into position room by room. And the guys just came and ripped through and put them up. And lots of little things we learned from the builder, stuff we didn't think about. When we did the shopping centre, they were doing all the soffits. And the biggest problem was, the floor and the ceiling weren't quite aligned. There's a bit of this going on. So they shot fired the soffits to the roof and then pulled all the soffits down to a single laser level across the building. and it looks amazing because everything's dead flat. But up above the ceiling line, it's all over the place. But as you're saying, it was 2 to 4 minutes to install each one of these soffits, where if we were doing it traditionally, we would be up and down. This is lifting, cutting stuff and moving stuff and laser leveling it. And it's not quite right. Pull the screws out, put them back in again. So again, it's that waste piece. Like, in the telescopic stud we make, there's probably an extra 10% material. But what's 10% material versus many hours of labour? So those are the things you sort of stand back and look at. Is everyone gets pushed down this. It's cost. We've got to do it as cheap as possible. It's not always the material. It's not always just working faster. There's a lot of really sort of smart things you can do that not all the time are that smart. They're just standing back and thinking for a minute. Okay, how do we do this better? And is there a better product out there, or is there a better tool for the job I'm trying to do?
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the training of your staff, because I'm getting a good impression of your OCD here.
Yeah. Well, that's why we love to bring apprentices through, because they start on the floor and they see all the problems. Even we bring in graduates into design team and stuff, and the first 6 months they spend on the shop floor, because you've got to understand what you're doing. And it's, again, there's plenty of smart apprentices out there. There's plenty of smart tradies out there that actually kind of want to progress off the tools to something else, and there's options in these sort of spaces for them. So we've probably got, of our 50 staff, there's probably 20 of them that have been with us north of 20 years now. We've probably got 5 that have been with us for more than 30 years. So they come and they stay and they move around different departments and do different things. And probably the best thing we actually have is when an apprentice finishes, he goes off somewhere else. He goes and does his OE, goes up to Europe somewhere, then comes back knocking on the door saying, I've come home, I want my job back. And we get a reasonable number of those. We've had a few that have left 2 or 3 times and come back because they just like the process and the thought thing. It's the whole thing of try it. If it doesn't work, most of the time it's no drama. As long as you're not doing anything silly or dangerous, let's try anything.
But you've created that environment for them. You set the tone. They know. Isn't it really about people being comfortable in their environment, whether that's on the site or whether that's on a factory floor? It's the knowing that you are confident in your own ability to deliver. If it's sweeping the floor or if it's driving the forklift, there's certainty in terms of what you're actually doing as an individual. So you don't have to be double guessing, or you're not shocked by something that might come across you, because you're in a safe, comfortable space that allows you to flourish. And I think it's another podcast for another day, that topic in particular.
Yeah, we went through quite a big period of trying to find tradesmen was terrible, and I think it is all over the world, because there's been, in the last 10 years, kids don't go from school to the trades. They go to university or to tech or whatever they do. And we've battled in ourselves, and we actually, in the last few years, doubled down on it and said, right, rather than just bringing people in from, anybody wants to come to New Zealand, we get lots of people wanting to come to New Zealand, coming in with a different set of skills doesn't fit the culture. Let's build up with the kids in the school. So we ended up going out through one of the organisations here, out to all the school guidance counsellors, because their mandate is pretty much send kids to university, just get them out of here and get them into the unis. But we talked to them and brought them in and gave a tour to them around the factory. So we had 4 or 5 of them come through, and then the following week they brought kids from the schools through. So we picked up quite a few apprentices, and they're kids that are very engaged. They want to do mechanical stuff, they want to do engineering, but they don't really see it. Maybe their parents come from an office job, but they just don't feel they're suited for that. And we like to pick up these kids. We pick up a few strays along the way, which actually generally turn into really good employees once they sort of get over their sort of late teenage years and a bit of wildness has come out of them. They're good. And that's, again, adds to that culture. We just, we're looking for the people, not the skills, or quite often. If someone's got the talent, we'd like to build on them. And we see that with a lot of our customers too. And maybe it's just because we're fairly like-minded in what we're trying to achieve. The goal is the bigger picture. The goal's not necessarily, I've got to make lots of money today. It's how do we make this better so tomorrow is easier so I can do more?
It is. Easy is the word. We don't have to struggle. Why are we grinding ourselves into a abyss, going 5 o'clock in the morning on site till 12 o'clock at night because this has to get done. And if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. This kind of culture mindset, work smarter, not harder. Yes, you can work hard when you're working smart, but working smart is getting it done in the most efficient time, safely, and within budget, and allows you to have the time space and the mind space then to be able to switch off and do other things like have a family, go on a holiday, listen to a podcast, whatever it is.
And it just gives you more time to think. And as you do that, you got more time, you get better and better. You see at the moment, there's all this burnout going on everywhere, and it's just because everybody's on all the time. Lifestyle's changed. Everything's got expensive. Everybody's working harder. Everybody's sort of racing to the bottom as much as they can. That's how do we, everybody thinks 20, 30 years ago it was better. I think everyone was still working hard. They were just working differently. And the good old you're not always on is the other thing.
Yeah, no. I always picture it like as if your brain is a filing cabinet, and it's just people just keep on putting files into it. Like, it's just constantly on a daily basis. Here's another file. Here's another file. Next thing, the filing cabinet's starting to tip over a little bit because someone opened up the top shelf. It's exactly how it looks and feels, isn't it? Because we've all been there. I know I'm talking, as if I'm preaching. I'm not preaching because I was there, like doing crazy hours, and probably some people still think like you don't switch off, but like if it doesn't feel like work, you must be doing something right.
It's very much too about building friendships as we go as well. It's something that, funnily enough, we had some consultants in a long time ago, and they said, "Oh, you're too friendly with your customers. They're not friends; they're customers." It's like, well, why can't they be both? And some of them are friends and not customers. It's sort of again, it's that attitude of thinking about how it is. It's the sort of greater good of the industry is what we're pushing, and we're always happy to talk to anyone about it that wants to just come and have a chat.
I love that you said that because that actually came up in a meeting that I was at last week, the friends talk, where clients are friends, and it was a pretty big major company. I think they have about 8,000 staff, and one of their core values is that they treat their customers like friends. Like, it's not a case of buying tickets for football matches and all that kind of stuff. It's like generally that they actually pick up the phone and have a chat about everything, and then talk about work as well. And there's a line of professionalism that's never drawn or never crossed. It's drawn, but it's not crossed. Sorry. But there's no reason why you can't have a client that is a friend. And I know that definitely in my business, I would regard a lot of, if not all of our clients as friends at some level. Maybe the tone of the conversation is different, and the language of the conversation can be different as well. But it's a great culture. It's a great culture pinch point or KPI if you're thinking about putting a culture program together, that you have an attitude that even if the guy or the girl sweeping the floor is sweeping the floor on a day and the client comes in, that they feel comfortable around the client, that it isn't, oh my God, there's the client and Nick walking down here. I better make it look like I'm working here and busy or distracted. No, go over and have a chat with the client. How are you doing? How are things?
Yeah, and it's a client selection piece too. It's, no one really wants to work with someone they don't really get on with or is making life hard for them. Sometimes we have to. Sometimes it needs must, and you've got to find some work. But other times, we can be picky, and you want to pick the people you want to work with, and the projects that are a bit of fun. I'm sure every tradie's been to places where they struggle because the customer wants to change stuff every 2 minutes or is never happy with anything that's going on. But and you get a bit of that, but it's a matter of we're selecting. We want long term. For us as a machinery manufacturer, we want our customers to grow from 1 machine to 10 machines to 20 machines, and that doesn't happen just by dumping stuff on them and saying off you go. That's a long term process, and even we're probably not unique, but we're different in the fact that our sales cycle is probably 18 to 24 months. So a lot of water goes under that bridge before you get to the point of deciding what's the right thing for them and what's the right way to go. Some of them happen in a day, but most of them is a long process of how do we do it, what do we learn from each other. And I think as a company we've actually built up quite a good core of customers that we can pick up the phone and say, this guy in Ireland wants to talk to someone in Florida, connect them up and they have a good chat and, this is what we do, this is what they do. And they come up with some good ideas together. There's no real competition. And even locally, we get a bit of it. There's always a little bit when you're in a small area, a bit of push and shove between different companies, but generally they all get on. And if anyone's stuck, they will always help each other out. And I think that's part of that process of it's like-minded people all working together and pulling in the same direction for the good of the industry.
Yeah, it's definitely the law of attraction. If you live and breathe that mantra, generally people of similar like-minded attitudes will follow you, or it's just a natural pull, isn't it? When you and once you're comfortable in that space and it's not fabricated or it's not put on, if you like, that it's natural. I think it's definitely another podcast. Tell me, with your background in the mechanical world, shall we say, a couple of random questions. Favorite car or vehicle and why?
Oh, that's a hard one. I like all cars. I've always been partial to an old Land Rover. So I had one of those. My first car was an old Land Rover, keeping it going and play with that. But Kiwis,
it's not giving you any trouble.
All that races cars. I haven't got the old one anymore. I've got a more modern Discovery, which is still actually going pretty well. Big family wagon. But we used to do a bit of off-roading and stuff. So
very good. And knowing what you know now, Nick, what would you do different?
So it's a good one. A lot of the sort of early on in the career side of things is take a chance on stuff. Not crazy stuff, but there's opportunities fall in your lap, and some of them are pretty easy to turn away because you're busy. But I've got to visit some really interesting places by saying, I'll stick my hand up, I'll go and do that. And again, they've been some of the more interesting experiences.
Yeah, very good. In terms of yourself, something about yourself, Nick, that not many people would identify with or would know. What is it?
What is there? That's a real tough one. I'm a bit of a mad inventor at times. I've got all sorts of little projects on the go, but that's sort of nature of where I've come from, what I've done. Probably the only other one.
Give us an example of an invention then.
We've got some little self-locking gearboxes and things that we've developed. So a little gearbox, we take the power input off it, it stops and locks up, and you have to destroy it to get it apart. We've got a few things and a few sort of weird and wonderful building things that just, why not try it? I guess that we don't think like construction people, and that's the thing, we're engineers at heart, so we're always looking for a challenge.
It's a bit of a geeky space then down in New Zealand in that little warehouse.
Yeah, and it's the old, I'm sure you have something similar in Ireland. We have the old number 8 wire attitude here because we're far away from everywhere. Farming number 8 wire used to be fix anything and everything.
Yeah, you can't wait.
For lack of a better idea, we make stuff work, which is a pro and a con because not many other people think like that. But probably Ireland's probably the closest place to that because you're similar sort of population and thoughts.
Yeah, no, very true. Favorite book or film, Nick?
Ooh, I actually read a lot of non-fiction stuff. I've read a lot of things around athletes and some of the older engineers, like the original sort of Tesla stuff and that Nikola Tesla and people like that.
Very good. Nick, an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I really enjoyed today's conversation. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it, and even if it's just a reset mindset, I think I think they could take that away as a nugget, if you like, for today. In terms of people want to contact you directly or want to know a bit more about your business, or maybe just to reach out for a chat, how do they do it and where do they go?
Yeah, so they can come to our website, which is howickltd.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. There's only one Nick Coubray, so I'm pretty easy to find. And just reach out and send me a message, or you can fire me an email. My details are on the website.
Brilliant. We'll put it in the show notes anyway, Nick. And I want to thank you from all the guys here very much for your time, your headspace, and we wish you all the success and continued success for the future. Best of luck, Nick.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hello, gaffers. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We love every one of the guests that we have, but in order to bring on more great guests, we'd love to build the channel with you. So hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and let's create a really great community where we bring in better and better guests for you to deliver great content and great pieces of information that you can take back into your business.